Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is Leo of MFW Plays, and we're going to be starting up a segment today called First Impressions. Now, the first game we're going to be taking a look at is called Eternal Senia. Now, this is a game that is free to play, it's an RPG off of Steam, and it was developed and published by Holy Priest. Before we get into the gameplay, I do want to discuss the plot of the game as it's the central premise for which you begin. So we're playing as the female protagonist Senia. She is searching for Priestess Magaletta, who has gone missing. Her searches lead her to the Tower of Eternity. Now, why is Magaletta so important? Because a few years back, Magaletta had saved Senia when her village was being attacked by demons, and Senia is effectively the only survivor. Considering this is a first impression, it's only fair that I give my current progress in the game, since I am going to be judging it by a fraction of what it is, so I need to give the metrics or the scope by which that I will be judging it. So right now, I'm only 2 dungeons in. I'm on the second dungeon, I'm in the demon castle. I completed the first one, and I've only fought 2 major bosses, one named Medusa, one is the leader of the fairies who is under a dark influence. And lastly, I've acquired most of the really powerful crafted material from the first dungeon, which puts me over par stat-wise for dungeon number 2. That being said, we could start to analyze all of the different aspects of the game and elements that came together to leave a first impression upon me. First thing I noticed off of visual contact, off of first play, was it plays very similarly to something like Legend of Zelda: A Link to the Past. Now, this added an element of nostalgia for me, which encouraged me to keep playing it. Throughout your journey, primarily you're fighting almost all the time, so it's only fair that we discuss this battle system, which I'd like to describe as simple but not dull, in the sense that whenever you collide with an enemy unit, you have an exchange of damage based on your stats and their stats, which seems like it could get boring after a while, but the game implements a series of skills that you can use on your character as well. Senia has 4 main skills that are available to her, one of which I haven't even unlocked because I am not yet that far into the game. She has an evasive strike that is on her Q, which allows her to travel a certain amount of spaces towards either the other side of uncrossable terrain or to an enemy unit, dodging all projectiles in between. Her W functions as like an AoE burst, so if you hit one unit or if you hit one space and there are enemies adjacent to that, then it will do damage to all of them as well. This also functions as a way to hit enemies that are a square away from you over impassable terrain. Now, there's also an additional skill on the E that functions as tossing your fairy friend at an enemy, and it can damage them, but it's also used for map interactions such as throwing your fairy friend across a large amount of uncrossable terrain in order to hit a switch. Now, we can't discuss the battle system without also discussing leveling up and stat gains, which this game definitely does well. I believe that the leveling up system, in terms of how much XP you get from monsters, scales very well with dungeon difficulty, the only exception being uber monsters, which you definitely need to grind for in order to defeat. Stat gains are pretty modest, but the bulk of your stat gains will eventually come from crafting, which luckily for you, if you're just grinding that 1 extra level, you will probably gain all of the materials that you need. Acquiring materials is not really a difficult task. It does require a little bit of time and going back and forth and slaying multiple monsters. With obviously rare equipment, you would need to defeat the uber monsters in order to get the highest class available to you. However, it's not that painful. With a little dedication, it's easily accomplished, and I would say that this game functions very modestly. Even the crafting system is pretty straightforward in the sense that you just need X amount of this material, Y amount of that, and then you can click OK and generate yourself some new equipment and get the next step up. So it's not tedious, it's not something like, say, Kingdom Hearts, in which you really need to grind for that incredible material to make that uber weapon after you've already beaten the final boss. In conclusion, this game left a marvelous first impression. There are light puzzles that won't necessarily boost you up any IQ, but they're a little trying. You have moderate difficulty in all regards. The leveling up system is modest, it won't put you too far ahead, it won't leave you behind. It's got an awesome soundtrack to boot. The plot is very straightforward, the crafting system very straightforward. It's a free-to-play game. Anybody who loves RPGs, anybody looking for something new, it's available on Steam. Download Steam if you don't have it. If you do have Steam, Eternal Senia. Search it up, download it, free. You don't lose anything except maybe a little time if you end up not liking it. So, marvelous first impression, Senia is eternal. Go check it out.